I do think with a certain kind of difficult personality, the only way to deal with them is by having severe consequences.
I think in long-term relationships, long-term close relationships, like you're constantly having to readjust and like renegotiate the terms.
This text from them was the platonic friend equivalent of the "hey, you up?"
It is a consequence of their action, but it's not a punishment.
Whoa, well, hello. Welcome back to Not For Everyone. This is a podcast hosted by a hater, me, and a lover, Jess. And I have missed you, little butt cheek.
I missed you too. I feel like we recorded our last episode together like early in that week, and then
Yeah,
we had a week where I did a solo. So it's been a minute.
it's been so long. I loved your
Been a
solo
minute
episode.
and
I
a
was like
minute.
yelling things at you the whole time that I wanted to add.
Do you want to add
So
them now,
good.
or they just live in our hearts
No, I just
together?
mean it was really engaging and thought provoking, and I
Thank
loved it.
you.
I don't think anything I have to say is important. It
Thank
was
you. I
great.
was really hard on myself for that episode, and I
Yeah.
think you could hear it in the episode because I kept pausing and saying like my voice is going and I'm tired and I feel like I'm getting sick and
And then
those
at one
all those
point, you
things
were
were
just like,
true.
at one point, it literally
Panting.
sounded like you were like going like on, like walking upstairs. She was breathing
Yeah.
so hard. And I was like, well, I'm not going to comment on this because I don't want her to feel insecure about her breathing. And then of your own accord, you told me you were like, I started walking around and breathing really hard. Or no, you added that in. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay. I'm glad this isn't actually like a medical concern I need to have
No,
about
although
you.
I don't think I should sound like that walking around either. Like
But
I
if you're
I
trying to
was
talk,
yeah,
but
I
if you're
was
trying to
trying to
talk the whole time,
passionately talk
I
while
think you're
pacing
fine.
around. Thank
Yeah.
you. No, I'm proud of it.
Oh, you
I
should be.
appreciate all of the messages saying that the episode and the topics resonated, especially because I was having like a weird week and I didn't feel like I had it in me to give a meaningful episode or a funny episode or anything. I just didn't have a lot to give, but I think
Oh,
almost
you did
like
though.
being beaten down meant that it was going to be authentic. So I love
Yeah,
that
I
for
don't need
us.
it. I don't need it to be hee hee ha ha. I just thought it was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say I'm getting over a sickness, so I feel pretty decent, but I do think there's a lot of vocal fry in my voice right now, and that's pretty annoying. But if this is the first time you're joining us, I don't think this is the vocal fry I usually have, and it will get better, but just shush
Don't
about it for
stop
now.
listening just
Don't
because
stop listening.
of her voice right now. I actually
Yeah.
can't really tell. So for the record, I don't know.
Sweet.
It's fine. You sound sultry.
Oh,
Say something
well,
sultry to
wow.
me.
I'm gonna stick this slug all the way down your throat.
Is that
Wait.
your what?
Oh, that's my kink.
Oh, you said wait. I thought that your I thought that your audio got messed up. Um, yeah, is that a thing that you've been saying? Is that working?
I'm gonna stick this slug down your throat. No, but I
Yeah.
did go to a haunted forest. My brother is
Okay.
working at this like enormous haunted forest, and that it's like literally it takes like 45 minutes to walk through the whole thing, and it's
Oh
in the
my God.
forest. It was so scary, and they have all these different exhibits and stuff you have to walk through. And there was one where I think it's supposed to be like there's like a hell house you walk through, and there's like a haunted church, and there's like a chainsaw junkyard, like there's all these different scenes. It's so cool. Markov's haunted forest, it's amazing. And then there was one that I think was supposed to be like a debauched whorehouse, and there was this man there who was kind of a skeleton, and he was holding this long like femur bone, and he walked up to me and he was like, do you want to suck my bone?
No.
I was like, this is a haunted forest for children, sir. I do not want to suck your bone.
Do you
But it
think they
kind of made me
tailor the
laugh.
messages? I guess if Luke is working there, then you have some insider info, or does he
I
keep
mean,
it
it's a
close
lot
to
of
the chest?
improvised. No, he
Yeah.
shares it. It's they're like there for hours, so I think they're kind of doing a lot of the people working there in costume are like children. This one wasn't. But like a lot of them are like 12-year-olds. They're like kids working
Whoa.
a little job. Yeah, it's super fun. He used to work there as a kid with his friend.
Oh, that's
And now he
cool.
like manages it. It's just in October, I think. But I think it's just very fun. Anyway, that's the
I
closest
was
I've got
talking
to sticking a slug down a throat.
I was talking to someone yesterday about they worked for a little while at medieval times, that like big have you ever been to a medieval times? Your face is looking
No.
empty. Okay. It's a
Excuse me.
you didn't give me the like enthusiastic medieval times reaction that I'm used to getting here in the Midwest. I think maybe it's
Really?
like bigger out here.
Is that like a Renaissance fair type thing?
Kind of. It's like it's a big arena that you buy a ticket. It's like a dinner place. Like you go there and you eat food while
Yeah,
also
an
watching like
entertainment.
a enactment of a medieval like archery, not archery, like sword fighting
Okay.
um
A
thing,
duel.
a duel. Yeah. And like different parts of the crowd have different knights that they're rooting for. And you eat like turkey legs, and the food's not very good. That's not really the point. It's just like the vibe of pretending that you're in this medieval time in like a big arena
That's cool.
watching a horse race and a sword fight and everything.
Hmm.
And I was talking to someone yesterday who used to work there, and he was giving me a lot of the
I love
like
that.
inside trading info on what it is. It's basically like WrestleMania, how
Yeah.
it's all kind of staged, or like they know who's gonna win, but the moves that happen during the fight are improv, but they do a
Improvised.
lot of like practice, you know, with a sword fight without actually hurting someone, like a lot of stage fighting, I guess. It's
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
interesting.
Oh, that's cool.
Um, yeah, I feel like your brother would be into that actually.
Yeah, he would be super into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one in Maryland. You guys could do a little. That's my recommendation. My hot recommendation for 2024 is that we should be going to medieval times more.
That sounds great. I would love to attend that very much.
Please do. Let's do it together. That could be a good
Oh my
NFE
gosh.
holiday party.
Yeah.
Just to go, just to go to medieval times, you, me, and Abby, and just eat turkey legs and watch a fake sword fight. I think that would be really on brand,
It
actually.
would be awesome. Okay, so that makes me think of recently my dad who like runs a private practice. And so he has like his private little office and he has a really great office culture. He like loves all his employees and they love him and it is like a little family style and very sweet. And he was complaining the other day though. He was like, well, he loves taking his staff out for staff parties and stuff. And he's always coming up with like different things to celebrate and fun. Like there's just a lot of spirit in his office.
Cute.
But then he was complaining and he was like, my staff only wants to do staff parties during office hours though. And I was like, well, I don't know how to break this to you, Dad, but like I agree with that. And I think most people agree with that. It's like
You don't want to give extra
otherwise
time.
yeah, what? Now it's mandated socializing time with my office. Like I don't care how much they love you or how much I would love a boss. Like now it's my social time is both mandated and also not paid. Like no, nobody wants that.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to break it to him. He was really looking to me for sympathy.
Has he watched The Office? I feel like he'll learn everything he needs to know about this office party culture from the party
I
planning committee.
guess there's an aspect of my dad. I love my dad and he's an amazing man, but there's a large part of him that is resistant to learning.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's not great. He
I
learned,
mean,
well, he's a doctor and he's learned so much so early to be able to do that. And he probably was like, I'm done now. I got it. I
yeah,
know
I got it
anatomy.
all. I mean, it's funny because he actually, I think one of the best values he imparted to me was the value of learning. And really, that's like the value of education. And that's one
Yeah,
thing I think is really rings really true for me is that it's a great antidepressant to continue learning and
gotcha.
educating. I think it just feels good. It feels like you're progressing. I think if you're feeling depressed or stagnant, like to just be like learning something and educating yourself, I think can be a really good upper and
Mm.
just a good thing to do throughout life. So he's always educating himself, but he has some fucking limit with like interpersonal relationships where he's determined he understands how and why things are and there's certain things that he like cannot take new information in on and I don't
Mm,
know if this is one of them.
I think that's probably just how a
Dads.
lot of, yeah, how a lot of dads or like people getting older
Yeah.
are. Like you can still learn information about like I don't know, biology or something or
Yeah.
history or something that like there's a book on and there's a clear answer and research on and stuff. But learning interpersonal stuff, even though obviously there's books on that and there's
Hmm.
research on that, but I feel like people just harden in the way that they are with other people and in relationships, and it becomes harder to learn like the emotional stuff than
Yeah,
it
because
is
it's
to
like
learn like the
behavior
book
change.
stuff. Yeah,
It's harder to do
exactly.
behavior change. And some
Exactly.
people do end up being good at that at an older age, but I do think it's usually an exception.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Breathless. Breathless
What
out here.
now? I'm always
What
breathless when I'm recording a
now?
podcast, apparently.
I will tell you. I'll tell you what now.
Tell me what now. Tell me what now.
Okay. This week, I think this past week or two was a big fucking boundary week for me. And I kind
Ooh.
of wanted to share.
Tell us
I
about
had
your
I had
boundaries.
two I had two boundaries this week
A whole
that
two?
I had two and they were both hard. One was smaller but profound, and one was bigger and profound and horrible.
Oh, okay.
I'll start with the small one. So the small one was there's this friend, like medium friend, sort of acquaintance, someone I've known for a few years. And honestly, when I met them, I thought we had a really good personality connection. I thought they were super cool. We hung out, you know, in total over a few years, we've probably hung out less than 10 times.
Okay.
And they are very effusive about liking me and wanting to build this community and wanting to hang out with people more in town. But they are also incredibly flaky and drop off the face of the earth. And it was enough that it like took an adjustment for me. And it took an adjustment. I was like, okay, this person isn't available a lot. That's okay. I can adjust my expectations. It's not going to be a friend I see a lot. That's okay. But then they also were really flaky, the kind of thing where they would reach out after like 6 months of silence and be like, hey, do you want to do something this weekend? And then I would reply, yeah, I'm free Saturday. And then they would never follow up
Mm,
until like 4 months later. So
that's
like
so annoying.
that's not even flaky like bailing. That's like actually kind of
It's
disrespectful and
rude.
like
You're gonna lose
it's
me.
rude. It's rude.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was maybe I should taking all of that in, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna adjust my expectations. I don't really expect anything from this. If I see this person, we hang out, cool. If not, I'm not expecting anything from them. And then it also became more of like a couple thing because at some point, Justin and I as a couple started hanging out with this person and their couple and another couple. And I liked all of these people, and we both really liked the group dynamic. Like the group dynamic, it's really hard to find a couple group dynamic that is good. Like that's
Yeah.
hard to find. And it was great. Like Justin and I both were like, this feels like something we've been looking for. And this flaky thing happened again. And it finally happened both to me and Justin, where Justin and I were hosting something just for like two other couples, really intimate size. And they fucking knew that it was an intimate size and they knew how much effort we were putting into this. It was like a full day of cooking, all this setup, like all these logistics, whatever. Like they knew. And then like 2 hours before, the same person texted and was like, oh, like made up some excuse why or said some excuse why they can't come, true or not. It and there were it really didn't feel sufficient or appropriate given what they knew about the event. The excuse, it may have been true, but it felt like an excuse because it seemed like there were a lot of other solutions for how they could come. It felt like I could like rattle off three solutions of like ways to get around it, but I wasn't going
Right.
to do that,
Like, well,
obviously.
you could have done this, or that to
Yeah, it seemed like
prioritize
there was a
this.
lot. Or if it's a legitimate problem, they would have, I feel like, included more about why those weren't solutions. But
Mm,
it was none of that. It was just like, oh, we can't come because this just happened. And then dropped off the face of the earth. Not even a follow-up text of being like, when I responded, not even a follow-up being like, so just like disappeared. Like 3 months, 4 months later, then. So Justin and I were both kind of like, well, we don't know what happened there, but it felt uh pretty rude,
hmm
the specifics. And then
And
three
it's
or
not
four
the
months
first
later,
time.
not the
That's
first
the
time,
thing.
I
Yeah.
I told him that this was kind of a part of the deal, that like this is a limitation. And I even said to him, I was like, there's a good chance They reach out again and like, what do you want me to say? I don't even know what the position is supposed to be now. Like,
Yeah.
and 3 or 4 months later, they reached out and were just like, oh my gosh, are you free for this? I miss you. And on one hand, I actually did feel up for seeing them in this limited capacity where I have very little expectations on consistency. And when we see them, it's a great time. Great.
Yeah.
Like, my expectation for that was good. But then I paused. I was going to reply and just be like, yeah, sounds great. Let's do this, 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 this. But then I paused and I like had this revelation that this text from them was the platonic friend equivalent of the hey, you up
Yeah, totally.
text of like from a fuck boy of some asshole I'd be casually dating, and I'd tell myself like, "Oh, I know this won't be anything serious. Like I've managed my expectations, and so like I'm not expecting much, and like, it's fine. I know what I'm getting in for, so I'll just hang out with them when they are available." But to be endlessly available to that text, whether romantic or platonic, it's like it it loses all respect for myself, and
Yeah.
it's just going to perpetuate that kind of behavior by constantly communicating to them that I'm okay with it. And I don't know, I just had this revelation of just being like, actually no, this is really rude. I find it really rude. I don't treat people like this. And I caught myself feeling that thing that listeners write into us about. We get this
Hmm.
message a lot where people are like, we just have such a good connection and I have such a good time with him when we're together. And like, if only he could get over his fear of commitment, then it would be great. I
Yeah.
don't want to lose out on this great connection. And to them, I'm always like, no, 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 there's no connection here. I don't care how good the personality fit is. If they don't treat you with respect, you have nothing.
Yeah.
And I'd overlooked that. I'd fallen into that same thing with myself, with a friend, of being like, it's a great personality connection. I think they're super fun. I think they're super smart. I love our time together. But in between, there is such a lack of respect
Hmm.
that why would I fight to keep this in my life? And it felt weirdly uncomfortable to reply and be like, "Oh, I'm not available." I didn't completely shut the door and I didn't write anything bitchy. I was completely friendly, but just
Yeah.
like I wasn't available for the things they recommended. I was
Yep.
not going to bend over backwards to make myself available or change my schedule. I wasn't going to be like, "Oh, I miss you," because
Yep.
I didn't. I was annoyed.
You weren't going to offer a
And
different time
no,
because they don't do that either.
I left it open and was just like, I'll be back in town at this time if you end up being free then. Like, put it back in their court, ball back in their court.
Yeah.
If they want to make more of a concerted effort, then I will see that from them. But if they don't, that's a pretty good answer.
Yeah.
And it felt weirdly hard. Like it was like a stupid little boundary, but it felt really hard to send, but it also felt so important in being like, why would I keep watering this like
Hmm.
unhealthy plant basically? Why would I keep watering this and feeding and fueling this thing that's lacking respect and lacking all the standards?
Yeah. I'm proud of you. And I do understand writing that text and it being hard. Like, I think I've been paying more attention to how I respond to those types of things and like the text
Yeah.
that I send to people. This is one of the earliest, like, big statements that you made on the podcast, I think, where you were like, I'm tired of texting people with so much effusive language, like, I miss you. I can't wait to see you. So many exclamation points, so much
Yeah.
like over the
It's
top
like yeah.
affection
It's like
to the
anxiety
point
texting.
anxiety texting. You can tell the difference between that
Yeah. And
when
genuine.
it's genuine and that when it's like, I just feel like I'm supposed to do this. It's similar to also what I said a few weeks ago about hugging and like, I don't know, some
Yeah.
people responded and were like, I will never stop hugging my friends. And it's like, yeah, neither will I. Obviously, I love giving affection to the people in my life when it's
Yeah.
genuine and when it's matched. But like when it's just because I feel like it's the etiquette or I'm supposed to, or like I'm trying to match what they're giving me, but in their actions, they're not. It's just like
Yeah.
in the words that they pop in with every once in a while. And then I never actually like see the follow through. Like I'm done with that. And so
Hmm.
I don't know. I think it comes up in a lot of different ways in our lives. And we've talked about it in a lot of different ways on the podcast. And I've been noticing how I respond to those people. And it is shifting. And I'm glad that it's shifting because I believe in what we're talking about. And it's a boundary that is important to me, that I'm not like giving that energy to places where I don't get it back.
Hmm.
But it also is very uncomfortable to write the text that's like a little less giving, like a little less effusive, a little less
Hmm.
like people pleasing, really, is what it comes down to. It is very
Totally.
awkward to write the text that's like, oh, I actually can't do that weekend, but hope to see you soon or something. Like that's not a rude text. That's not an inappropriate text to send, but
Yeah.
it feels weird when you're used to sending a text that's like, yeah, sure. I can't do Saturday, but I could do Sunday. And like, could you make this work? And could you make that work? And I really want to see you too. And blah, blah, blah. When you don't feel that way.
Yes.
When you don't feel
Because
that
I
way.
I think to me the fear in those moments is like if I don't like I alone have to keep making sure this door stays open. I
Yeah.
have to keep making sure this door stays open. If I stand up for myself, if I let myself feel my exasperation, if I let myself feel my fatigue and disappointment, then I'm going to lose this relationship opportunity. And so I have to keep letting it be open. And I can never acknowledge that like this is annoying and disrespectful to me. Whereas the reality is like there is no opportunity there if the person isn't respectful, whether you're looking for I think the stakes feel higher when you're looking for like a single monogamous romantic relationship and it's just
Yeah.
one. Stakes feel higher. But I have the same standard with my friendships. I can have many friendships and I actually expect a reasonable amount of respect relative to the amount that we're in each other's lives. I respect that from all of them. So if they're not giving that, there's no like friendship opportunity that I'm missing out on. And
Yeah.
every time I just like force that door open when it shouldn't be open at all, I'm just kind of telling them like you can keep walking on me. Go ahead, keep doing it. I'm still here.
Hmm.
I'm still on the ground. Keep walking on me. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
what
And
is the point?
even like the distinction between monogamous romantic partners and friends is an important one in the sense that like, yeah, when you're looking for one person to fill a lot of needs for you versus something where I can have friends that I'm closer and less close with, and like there's a spectrum there, and that's okay. That is an important distinction. At the same time, um, if you're in a position where like you're new to a city, like this is a message we get a lot from listeners. I'm new to this city and I don't have any friends here. And so I've found this person or this group of people, and it's something. It's like more than I had before, and I
Yeah.
have nothing, and they're treating
Yeah.
me in ways that I don't think really line up with what my expectations would be. But I kind of it's like an attitude of like, but beggars can't be choosers. Like they are humans for me to do things with on the weekend, and I don't have that right now. Like how much can I put up with is honestly like the question that gets asked.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard because you're like, yeah, people you do want friends and you don't have them in this new city right now. But at the same time, if you decide that that's where you're putting your energy and you're like accepting less, then then you don't have that energy to put somewhere else that could give you more.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing with
I do
dating.
think it's the same. Yeah.
If you accept the lesser treatment from the fuck boy, telling yourself like, well, I don't have I have a void that I want to fill right now, and I know what this is and I'm okay with it. You're still spending your energy there, and it's a finite amount of energy, and you can't put it to finding the
Somewhere
thing that
else.
you actually want. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I do think it's a risk. You're choosing to take a risk on that's not going to pay off in the way that you are really looking to be rewarded. But it's
Yeah.
hard in the meantime to feel alone, to feel like you don't have those people. So I have empathy for it, but I do think like I don't know, holding the boundary that puts your expectations for your relationships first is the thing that's going to feel best in the long run.
Totally. I think there's a difference too between being like, ugh, I don't really know these people that well. I don't even feel like going out, but I'm gonna do it anyway, even though we don't have a deep connection. I'm gonna do it anyway because this is putting in the work to
Yeah.
make new friendships in a new city. I think there's a difference between that and being like, these people treat me badly.
Yeah.
And I don't respect how they interact with people, and I'm gonna keep doing it. Those are two different things. Like just having the lack of deep connection versus someone, you want to put in that time to build new relationships. It takes time, it takes being uncomfortable, it takes patience, it takes experimenting. But once you're like, this person is consistently uh giving less than what I hope to find in a friend, in a relationship, why would you keep investing in that? Also, the longer you invest in it, like sunk cost fallacy, the longer the less inclined you are going to be to ever stand up for yourself, to ever leave it, because
Mm.
you're like, well, I put all this time into it. It gets harder and harder.
Yeah.
You know?
I liked something that you said. You framed it as that you are losing respect for the way that they treat people, as opposed to phrasing it as like they are treating me with a lack of respect. It's like I don't respect how you're treating me. Do you
Oh
hear
yeah,
the difference? Like I like that framing. It should be, I feel like in romantic relationships with friendships, there's such a tendency, especially when you're coming from like a scarcity mindset where you are in the new city with no friends, or you've been single for a really long time and just like banging your head against the wall on the apps, and you're like, um I want to find somebody who likes me, but it really should be, okay, who do you like and what are you looking for? And so
yeah,
I just liked that I don't think you intentionally did it, but just the way you phrased it was like, I don't respect how they're treating me, as opposed to, it is important that they're disrespecting you, but shouldn't you not respect that they're not respecting you? It's about your
totally.
self-respect more than
Because
anything.
because I think a lot of it sometimes, I think what I said was like, I don't respect how they treat people, because this also applies to like, if they're being super nice to me, but I watch how they treat other people and it's
Yeah.
gross. Basically, watching how people treat the people that they don't have any use for.
Uh-huh.
Anybody can be nice and courteous and generous and enthusiastic with someone they have a use for. What about the people they don't have a use for? What about the person that's a little inconvenient or in their way? Like, if I see people, if I don't like how you treat those people, that you can't even be tolerant, respectful, you know,
Yeah,
and decent, then well, I don't care how nice you're being to me. That's also not someone I respect. That's also not someone I want to be friends with.
totally. It's the thing about what's like your red flag on a first date. And it's so common for people to say, treating the server rudely, which I find to be obvious, but at the same time, it is important. Like, if I would never overlook
I feel
that.
like we also shitted on that at one
I
point.
did. I did.
Yeah,
Because
we
I
both
think it's
did.
obvious. I think it's baseline. But at the same
Oh,
time,
oh, oh, oh,
like,
I see.
it's not that it's wrong. It is correct. It's
Oh,
just
I
that,
see, I
like,
see.
I would think of other things.
Baseline.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
would just think of other things. That's
because
funny.
that to me,
I
that's
see what
like,
you mean.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
canceled. Like, that's not even, you're not even in the conversation
That's
anymore
true.
if I
That's
see
true.
that.
Yeah.
But it is what you're saying. It's like, okay, how are you treating just like any old person, let alone a person that you
Any
like
old herd.
want something
Yeah.
from? Yeah. Good for you.
Yum,
What
yum,
was the
yum.
bigger? You said that was the smaller of the two
That was
boundary
a smaller one, but it felt
moments.
important.
Pretty big. I have a complaint. I am so sick of having to come up with things to cook every day, 3 times a day for the rest of my
I know,
life.
until you die.
And it is for that reason that I have used HelloFresh. I just appreciate that they send me delicious meals that I don't have to think about. I don't have to pre plan. I don't have to go to the grocery store for. I can just look at a couple of bullet points and then make the meal in my kitchen in like 20 minutes, and it tastes good. It looks how the picture looked. It makes me feel like I'm ordering takeout. It feels good.
It does feel good. I've used Green Chef and HelloFresh. And by the way, Green Chef is now owned by HelloFresh. I love using both of them. The way Justin and I like to do it recently is like we're traveling shortly, and I like to ship a meal to wherever we're traveling to.
That's
so we don't have
smart.
to go and buy like a whole week of groceries when we travel. Yes, I do think it's smart of I think it's smart
She's
of me.
smart.
So when we go to a new city, we can still like go and eat out a couple times, but we don't have to eat out every time. We can make like 2 or 3 meals at home. So I really, really like that. A+ to them.
A+ to them. I will also just shout out that I was using HelloFresh before Ryan and I started dating, and he came into my HelloFresh lifestyle as someone who has worked in professional kitchens. He was very dubious of the situation, and I was like, just trust me, you will see the light. And he's actually a big fan now. He like gets the appeal. He sees how much it's like made my life easier as someone who hates going to the grocery store and meal planning.
Chef endorsed. You guys can get 10 free meals at hellofresh.com/free not for everyone. That's FREE not for everyone spelled out. You can apply that offer across 7 boxes. This offer is for new subscribers and it varies by plan, but that's 10 free HelloFresh meals just by going to hellofresh.com/free not for everyone.
Oh, the big one. The big one.
big
I can't
kahuna.
even. The big kahuna. I want you to be like, what's like the track on like,
Yeah.
you know, like in a rap song.
Yeah,
One of these
Migos.
rapists.
How Migos
Yeah,
they
like
do what's
they
it
do like
called?
little like echoes in the back.
Ad-libs. Ad-libs.
Yeah. Yeah. Migos was yeah, like
That's
while
my
I'm
destiny.
talking, I think you just throw in little catchphrases in the background while I'm talking.
Honestly,
Big kahuna. And
I love to just when somebody's telling a story, I do this a
Yeah.
lot. I think it's harder over Zoom because there's like a slight delay and it's like I don't want to interrupt you on Zoom. It gets a little messed up. But in real life, I love when a friend is telling a story and I'm in the background just ad-libbing big kahuna or like I do it all the time, and I really
That's
think that
so
it adds
funny.
to the enjoyment of the story for the
It's
crowd. I
layering.
like to hype up my friends.
Yeah, it's like you're adding another narrator and like you're adding context and color and like tone. I feel like you're adding like the color correction to my movie. You're
Thank
like
you.
big kahuna.
Big kahuna. So
Okay.
as you describe this
Feel free to continue
big
that.
boundary that you set that
Yeah.
seems really profound, I'm going to do that.
Okay, keep doing that. And I'm not going to pause to acknowledge it. I just want you to know that I love it nonstop, but I'm not going to interrupt the flow of this rap.
I got you. Okay.
Okay. Just close your eyes. I got you.
Gotta focus. Gotta lock in.
Okay, I have been struggling to think about how to talk about this because this basically involves the relationship in my life, and we all probably have at least one of these. That is, it is not really possible to remove this relationship from my life. It's in my life. And it's going to be in my life, and I do choose it in my life. Like, I guess you can always write off anybody if you want to. So this is a choice. I choose to keep this relationship, which is a difficult and challenging relationship in my life. And
It's a choice. That wasn't that good. I'm gonna keep trying.
No, I love that. I loved it.
Pro-choice.
It makes me laugh. Pro-choice. Pro-choice. What was my point even? I don't even know what my point is. I don't think I even have that much to say, except that this is that relationship where it's the most difficult for me to have a boundary, and the kind of thing where the person is very inclined to make themselves the victim when actually you feel like you're owed an apology. Someone who's not inclined to apologize ever. I don't think I've ever heard an apology from them to me or to anybody. They are always the victim. I'm never understanding what they're going through. I can never conceive of their feelings, even though I feel like almost all the energy is one way, me working towards understanding them more, me working towards being more patient with them. Like we've all met this person once or twice. And because of how manipulative this kind of person can be, the usual communication, the usual sharing feelings, the usual vulnerability, it like just doesn't apply to some relationships. It just doesn't fucking work in some relationships. And this is one of them. And it feels so fucking hard to ever hold a boundary, to ever stand firm in what I know, whatever. And I basically just like stood my ground and didn't back down and didn't apologize because I had nothing to apologize for, even though I knew that like groveling and apologizing might get them to stop being mad at me. But like I actually paused to think about it and I was like, no, I stand by everything I said. I stand by everything I've done. I can't control if you misconstrue or misrepresent me or want to try and deflect blame. And actually, in addition to that, while I'm sad that there's this fight, I'm also actually pissed and I'm fed up. And being able to get in touch with that anger, like we've talked about, felt correct. And I basically just stood my ground and had this anger and also had so much fear. And I've been massively in that like discomfort period of like, well, I have no fucking idea how they're going to retaliate against me now. It feels so uncomfortable. I have no idea how they're going to write this narrative now. But honestly, a lot of the conversations we've had on the podcast recently about that stuff, like I don't think I was going through any hard boundary times while we've been talking about the stuff. It was like you were going through a lot and I was in an easier period. And then this was, I think, the first really big uncomfortable one that hit me since that. And it was so nice to be able to reference our conversations and just be like, the discomfort is the way. Like the discomfort does not reflect whether this was the right or wrong thing to do. It's like the discomfort is the thing I'm always trying to avoid. And then weirdly, actually, I saw this person a few days ago for the first time since this discomfort period. And I was I was terrified to see them. Terrified because I can't explain like the pain and the punishment and the cruelty and the attack. It's like I never know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I was actually afraid. I was thinking about it for days. Like I'm afraid to see this person. And but I held firm on everything. And when they saw me, they reacted in a way that they have never once in my life reacted after a fight or a thing. They personally approached me to give me a hug, which I was shocked by. And it was not manipulative. This is not how they usually manipulate.
Yeah.
It just seemed and like we said I love you to each other. And I was like, that was the closest thing I'll ever get to an apology from this person. Like to me, that was absolutely the olive branch. It was completely shocking. And I'm not gonna say that like they've changed as a person and I'm always gonna get this kind of reaction. But it was fucking huge. I was floored by it.
That's
And
awesome.
I don't think it was unrelated to the fact that for once I like didn't grovel.
Correct.
Yeah.
They have respect for you.
Maybe. Or like I don't even know with like this certain personality. I don't know. I can't know what they feel, but it's the kind of person whose feelings are so buried that it's really hard to ever know. I think it's hard for them to know what they feel. So
Yeah.
I won't guess, but I do think with a certain kind of difficult personality, the only way to deal with them is by having severe consequences. The only way. It's like, I don't know if they'll ever respect me. I don't know if they'll ever really think about my feelings or really be able to empathize the way that most other people can. I think the only tool is like, if you do that to me, I will remove my presence. If you do that to me, I will remove our hangout dates. If you do that, I will remove my warmth. I think that is like in these very specific kinds of personalities. I think sometimes that is the only fucking tool you have left. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what they feel, but
the tool is your boundaries, like you said.
yes,
It's not really like punishing them. It's I'm
No.
setting a boundary, and if you cross it, I will do what I need to do to protect my boundaries. So like
Oh yeah.
it can come across, it is a consequence of their action, but it's not a punishment. It's like
It's
you
not.
holding
It's
firm
not
to your
to.
boundaries.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's not like aimed at having any
At
specific
hurting them.
response from them. Like I
Yes.
don't intend. I have no idea what it would do in response. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I get it. I really like I couldn't do the ad libs during what you were saying because I was too I was too captivated and like it didn't feel like the right time. Big kahuna.
I think that's
That is a
also
big
good that
kahuna.
I
Big
think it's
kahuna.
good that you can also feel out the vibe. And
Thank you. I'm good at reading the room. It's actually
You
one of
sat down the mic.
my biggest pet peeves about like people who can't read the room really like irk me.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the room wasn't right for my ad libs, but
Sorry.
what it is right for is like I really resonated with what you're saying. I really like that you referenced recent podcast conversations because I feel like I've been doing that too. Even though I was in it when we were talking about,
Yeah.
we've been, I mean, whatever, every episode we talk about boundaries, but I think there was like a specific time when I was talking about a difficult conversation and the fallout of that conversation and like kind of how I've been feeling since the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like helpful to have that recorded for me to reference
Yeah.
and remember, like when I have those moments of weakness or those moments of fear or those moments where I'm like, was this right? I remind myself of the conversations we've had when I was feeling strong about it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like it
Yeah.
helps
Yeah.
me return to that mindset because you're not going to feel that way 100% of the time
Mm-hmm.
after doing something hard. It's going to fluctuate and go up and down. And like, it's just about returning to that assured mindset that is like when you are in yourself. So, it's been helpful for me too. And
Good.
I definitely I definitely think there's something to like when you set a boundary with someone and hold firm to it. I don't know if it's respect or what to call it, but I do think that the other person just senses that they can't get out of you what they're used to getting out of you.
Yes. Yes. Even on a
And
subconscious level, even if it's
yes,
not like,
it's
it
not
doesn't mean they're,
conscious.
yeah, it doesn't mean they're all like master manipulators trying to see what
No.
they can get away with, but I think it's a human thing.
Yes.
I think
No,
it's a human
rarely are
thing.
they
Yeah.
rarely are they
Yeah.
consciously manipulative. Like there are personalities in my life who end up being manipulative of me and my people-pleasing tendency and my need for approval and to be liked, and like there are people who manipulate that in me, but they're not I am sure that they're not consciously aware that they're
Yeah.
doing that. They're
Yeah.
good people who love me in their own way, and they don't know, okay, I'm going to manipulate Jess today.
I'm going
That's
to take
just the
advantage of
dynamic.
Jess. Mhm.
Right. That is just the dynamic that has developed because of how I am, because of how they are, because of how they have learned that they can get things out of me, whatever those
That's what
things are.
works. That's
That's
what's
what's worked.
effective.
And as long as I continue to repeat that pattern, then even if I tell them, you're hurting me, you're upsetting me, whatever,
Mm.
if I'm still behaving in that pattern, then they're never going to change that
Yeah.
manipulative behavior. And that's on me as much as it's on them, to be
Mhm.
honest. Um, so once you start to change the way that you show up and hold firm to a boundary and they see that and they realize I can't do it the way I've been doing it, like it forces their hand. I think
Yeah.
most of the time they have to do something different, whether it's better, whether it's good, whether what they end up doing is like ideally what you would want them to do is a different story. I'm not saying you now get to control what they do, but they are going to do something different than what they were doing
Yeah.
before because you're doing something different than what you were doing before. And so I think that's what you're noticing. Like this person showed up to the first time you were going to see each other after that hard conversation and that boundary was set. And they had to do something different than what they've done before because you set that new pattern, that new dynamic into motion. And I've seen that work for myself too.
Yeah.
After the difficult conversation I had a month or two ago that I spoke about, it's if people are curious and like new to the podcast, it's in the title of that episode, maybe like 7, 8 episodes ago. And I was getting ready to see the person who I had that difficult conversation with, and I felt exactly what you're describing. Like I felt that fear. It was sad that I felt that fear because this is also a person that I'm close to and I want to look forward to seeing. But the fact of the matter was I was afraid. I didn't know what it was going to be like after I had been very firm with them about a boundary and about something that was going to disappoint them. And it was fine. I think it was actually even healing. We had our own version of the moment you're describing that was like a reckoning of like, okay, we got to find a way to
Wow.
exist in this new landscape together because Jess just set a new landscape. And so how are we going to move forward in it? And I was really pleasantly surprised by like the healing, I guess, without
Mhm.
talking about it again. but just like the difference in how they showed up to meet me after I had set my boundary. So
Huge.
it's huge. I just really get what you're describing. And I really
Yeah.
think for folks who are like anticipating needing to set that type of boundary, needing to have that type of difficult conversation, like it won't necessarily look like it's not going to be like a dream world on the other side of it. It's not going to be
Yeah.
like, oh, everything about the relationship changes and we're now, just uh like skipping over clouds and rainbows together. But like it is going to be different
Kahuna.
in a way where it's might not be like happy and joyful necessarily, but it will be
At least different.
more in alignment with your needs and different.
Yeah. I heard someone say recently that like you do often change what you receive by changing what you put out.
Mhm.
And, it's like there's cause and effect for everything. I kind of think of it as like what's that law of the how like matter is not destroyed nor created?
Yeah, matter like there's something, it's like matter comes from matter or
Maintenance,
something.
it's something like maintenance of matter or like
I mean,
retention of matter.
there's
You know what I
multiple
mean, dog?
M's. There's multiple M words, yeah.
I think it's matter, but yeah, but I kind of think of it that way. Like there's only room for so much like air
Yeah.
in a given room. And if you open a door, air can't rush in unless you open a window and air rushes out as well. It's like there's only so much room in there. And if you want to make room for something new, you have to like let something else leave.
Yeah.
I also think of it in the way I think it's like to emphasize that it's not usually malicious with people. Of course, there are some people out there who are malicious and who are trying to manipulate you. But with most people, this rule of like you show people how to treat you, I think that exists with everybody, even the people who love you the most. To me, the example is kind of, or the metaphor is kind of like if you have a bunch of professors in college and they all, for each of them, you have to write this like super long annotated bibliography with all these footnotes and all this research and all these references, blah, blah, blah. But like Professor A doesn't actually check the footnotes and like doesn't really care if the footnotes are there. And like they say it needs to be 10 pages, but if you hand in 8, it's like fine. And Professor B is a fucking hard ass, and you know that you will get uh doxed docked points if you don't put all the footnotes and it's not the perfect referencing structure and it's not at least 10 pages. Which one are you going to fucking put the extra time into? If you
Yeah.
know you're going to get an A from Professor A regardless, why would you do the extra thing? It doesn't have to be malicious. But if Professor A all of a sudden starts being like, dog, I'm not giving you an A, there's no footnotes here. All of a sudden you're going to start putting some fucking footnotes. It doesn't have to be that you have malintent. It's just like, we're not all trying to max out everywhere where someone shows us we can take a shortcut.
That I love that a lot. That's exactly right. It's like exactly. It's you show people how you expect to be treated. You have to
Yeah.
teach them sometimes, even if they're people who have been in your life for a really long time. Like,
And love you and are great people.
yes, and think, they're doing their best, but it doesn't line up with what you need. Like that's everything. That's
Yeah.
everything all the time. I mean, Ryan and I are even like in a smaller way navigating some of this recently because we moved in together and it's been about a month. Yeah, it's been about a month. I've
It's been
already
about a month.
it's
I'm trying to do
been
it.
one
I'm
month
trying
since we moved in
well,
together.
right. I'm trying to do the backup track, but I'm not as
Oh,
good
the
at it.
ad libs. I think
The
we
ad
both
libs.
talk to like our words are too connected and our sentences are too
Yeah.
connected to have a lot of space for it. We'll just have
Sorry.
to do like we'll have to produce a song. That's later.
Okay.
That's not now.
I would absolutely. No,
Do that
now.
right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Ryan and I in our relationship have done a lot of work to like understand how best to communicate with each other, show up with love, like adjust things that, you know, we are able to adjust that better match up to what the other person needs. Like that's being in a loving relationship where there's give and take and where you're
Mhm.
always working on it together and where you're both invested. And so we've been doing that for the years that we've been together. And now that we're living together, it's like a new context. And we've done a lot of the work to set ourselves up for this point. But even still, there's like new things coming up that I don't know. I'm just realizing like you can only talk through so many things before
Mhm.
something in the environment changes and there's like gonna be new things to talk about. And you might need something different because now the environment's different. You might need somebody to show up in a different way from I might need him to show up slightly differently than how I needed when we didn't live together and vice
Yeah.
versa. Like
Mhm.
it's just been a really interesting exercise in like, oh, I thought we had like worked through a lot of things, which we have, and also like prepped for the move in together and
Yeah,
talked
that's
about a lot
funny.
of the things that like we thought were going to come up so that we were prepared. And while some of those things have come up and we have been prepared for them, there's also some of the things we talked about that actually have not really been issues like we thought they would
Mhm.
be. And then there's been new things that we didn't anticipate would be issues that are. And so I guess
Mhm.
that sounds obvious, but the point is that I think in long-term relationships, long-term close relationships, like you're constantly having to readjust and like renegotiate the terms. And
Yeah.
so why wouldn't somebody who has been in your life and loves you and cares about you and maybe was treating you one way for a long time, why wouldn't they need to like adjust that as you become an adult, make decisions that are different from the ones they would make decisions that maybe move you further for that from them, whether physically or emotionally. None of it because you don't love them or don't care about them, but just because you're doing what you need. Like you're going to have those points of adjustment in any close long-term relationship.
Yeah.
I don't know if what I just said was connected, but I think it was in my brain.
I think it was super connected and super kahuna. I
Thank
want to
you.
know if you can share anything that you guys thought was going to be an issue moving in and wasn't.
Yeah. Okay, Kooks, real quick, we have a PSA because Caroline and I discovered this new podcast that we've been crushing on a little bit. I have to say it. The host, like you, like me, like Caroline, is a big thought spiraler. So her podcast is called Magical Overthinkers, and it's all about those thought spirals that you go down when you're just like in a rabbit hole, anxious about life. She explores everything from imposter syndrome to social media comparison to burnout. And I've really been enjoying listening to it. She brings in a lot of like research and experts to talk about it. So whereas we are just bullshitting our way through life, she actually brings in some science, some hard science to validate the spirals that we all go through. And I've really been liking it. Magical Overthinkers.
Yeah, people are always asking basically for more episodes from us. And while I appreciate the sentiment, we're going as fast as we can. So I feel like in their off weeks, I do feel like this is the podcast people are looking for. If you want more of this vibe of like these topics, but actually presented with someone who's not a fake scientist, but knows some actual science. Amanda Montell's the host, and she wrote Cultish. I know a lot of people who are obsessed with that book. She also wrote The Age of Magical Overthinking. She has another podcast called Sounds Like a Cult, and she interviews like brainy or charismatic experts on whatever the topic is in each episode. I don't know. It's just like a lot of fun if you love a rabbit hole deep dive like I do, somewhere constructive to put your overthinking, spiraling energy. It's thought provoking and also just like makes me feel not insane. It's very validating.
That is the most important thing of any podcast. I think if you want a good episode to start with, I would say Overthinking About Celebrity Worship was one that I really enjoyed. Caroline and I have talked about beauty worship, and that I think ties very closely with celebrity worship. So that's a good place to start. Listen to Magical Overthinkers every other Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts. Yes. Okay. So one thing I thought was going to be an issue, he didn't. I did. So we talked about it beforehand. Um, was just like, who gets groceries and how do we do the finances? Like, how do we
Mhm.
make sure that not one of us is like spending more on
Shared
groceries or
stuff.
things around the house or whatever? Um, because there's also considerations of like making different amounts of money and like just being able to contribute different amounts, which we have set up in terms of like our monthly payment and our utilities and everything. We obviously communicated that stuff. But then the more day-to-day expenses, where like if I'm out and I'm like, oh, while I'm out, I'll just get groceries for us, or him doing the same thing. I don't know. I was really worried that like we would butt heads on that, or
Mm-hmm.
somebody would end up doing a lot more of it than the other person, and it would feel uneven and cause resentment.
Mm-hmm.
And it really hasn't at all. Like, I don't know. I think we just trust that both of us are doing what is needed for the unit. And like, whether that's getting groceries or buying like this thing that we need for like to store our utensils, or, like whatever random shit that we need, like we're both just on it and contributing, and we're not like Venmoing each other all the time, and we're not like worrying about the details.
So you're not like
Um,
tabulating stuff, or like you're just assuming that you guys basically that each of you get groceries enough that it comes out in the wash?
yeah, pretty
Or
much. Pretty
okay, okay,
much.
okay.
Big expenses we're splitting in, and
Yeah.
we've decided like kind of the proportionality of how we're splitting. But the day-to-day things, we're just kind of both doing what is needed and assuming that it comes out in the wash. And like
Okay.
Ryan had said that that's something he felt comfortable with before we moved in together. And I was like, okay, like I'm kind of worried about that, because you hear people like say that doesn't work for them or whatever. But I
I
also
guess it
don't really want to be on
depends.
the other side of the spectrum and like Venmo request you for like $20 all the time. Like that feels weird too. Um, I don't even know if we like made a conclusion on it
Yeah.
before moving in together, but it was just like a topic that I thought we needed to have like an approach for.
Yeah.
And it has just naturally unfolded in this way. And we did check it. I checked in with him about it because it was something I was worried about, to be like, so this is what you meant. Like, does it actually feel fine to you?
Yeah.
It feels fine to me. And he was like, yeah, it does. And
It's
I don't
awesome
know.
though.
I can tell that it's not creating an issue between us, because like, I
Yeah.
think we just see it as like, we are a unit and these are day-to-day things that like one or both of us needs, and we'll get we'll figure out the bigger things, but the smaller things is like, I want you to have eggs, or like like it's okay.
That's funny.
So
I
yeah,
think
that
it's
was
good that
something
you
that I
talked
was
about
stressed
it.
about,
But
but it's not been an issue.
it
Hmm.
totally could have been a stress. And I don't think it was like wasteful or like
No.
silly that you brought it up beforehand, because you just established that like this is something we don't know how it will feel when we move in. And like I'm saying right now, before anyone's making any judgment and before it feels personal, like I think we can talk about this one
Yeah.
if we need to, because like could be weird or tricky. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and it
even the
might
fact that like
change.
you
It
didn't know
might
how it would be. Yeah.
Right. It's only been a month. It might change, and I'm totally fine with that. But I just thought that was going to be like some big hot button issue, and it just hasn't been. Whereas, like, I think stuff that we're
Like,
struggling more with has to do with, um, I guess, like making decisions together for like not even how to organize things, more like some decorating decisions and decisions about larger things in the home, or decorating things that make it feel like a home. Um,
yeah.
and knowing like, when is this a decision that we are going to make as a unit? And then if it is
Mm,
that, how do we go about doing that?
yeah.
Versus knowing when it's a decision that I can just make or you can just
Yeah.
make. Because
Yeah.
it's really exhausting to have to like check in with somebody every time you want to buy like a like small floating shelf for
I'd
like
fucking
this
hate
one
that.
corner. You
I
know what
would
I
fucking
mean?
hate that. Yeah.
And neither of us requires that, but like we didn't know at first, and it wasn't something that we got ahead of, because like I
Yeah.
just didn't really think of it beforehand. And then I would be like shopping online for like odds and ends that I thought would be helpful in the place, and I'd be like, do I need to show this to Ryan before ordering it? Like, that's
This fucking
really
trash
fucking
can,
annoying.
this bathroom
Yeah,
for the trash. Like, am I asking for it? Also, it's like when it's like
exactly.
they probably weren't even thinking of this. Like, most people probably don't even have an opinion.
Correct.
But now, if I ask for their opinion, are they going to like dig
Are
up
they going to
something and
come
now
up
it's
with
going
an
to be
opinion?
harder? It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the hardest topics. Obviously, like people ask me to make a video on this topic
Yeah.
all the time, how to like design with a roommate or a partner or someone you're sharing your space with, usually with a couple. And I've not made a video on it because I've only lived with a boyfriend one time. Correct. And
Mhm.
honestly, it was really, really hard. And I'm gonna fucking say I blame that on him because
Mhm.
I don't think I'm fucking that difficult. And I feel like I went all the way to trying to accommodate his design preferences and his budget preferences and whatever. I don't know how much fucking accommodating he did, frankly, but it felt like a complete fucking failure. And I am gonna say I think that's because I wasn't with the right person. And I
Yeah.
haven't lived with Justin yet, but we've already talked about what works for us. I'm sure we'll adjust once we live together one day, but like I think it's just unique. You and I have talked about this a little bit, but I
Mhm.
think it just depends on the person. I don't think, or the couple, I don't think it's a static thing. Like when you were talking about expenses and buying groceries and stuff, like your system, I don't think that would work for Justin and I because
Mhm.
Justin,
Actively knowing
yeah,
like that's going to be your lane, that's going to be my lane. We're reactively being like, oh, it doesn't, I didn't think about the fact that like I would be in this position where I'm wondering if I need to check with you about this stuff.
yeah.
Do you care about this stuff or
Oh
can
yeah,
I
yeah,
own it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, which it feels like he has worked as a professional chef. He does 90% of our cooking. Therefore, he does a large majority of our grocery shopping.
Makes sense.
Makes sense. I am way more of the person who's like obsessed with organizing. I don't want a drawer to just be like a bunch of shit dumped in it. I want like sub containers. I want like drop zones in around the house. Like I need things to be like in their place. And so I
Yeah,
don't need to check with him about like getting those storage unit type of things or like the
I see
way
what you
that
mean.
I organize our bathroom cabinets or whatever. But when
Yeah,
it comes to like the design of like our furniture and our decor, that is more 50-50 the way
yeah,
we're
it's
doing it, and
hard.
that is hard. We've done most of the big decisions by now, so I think we've cleared like the bulk of it.
It's the heavy
Um
lift. Yeah.
although I think like putting things on the walls is going to become like artwork and that type of decor is going to become our next challenge. The thing is that like we end up liking kind of what you said about you and Justin. Like there's enough overlap in what we like for design, and we tend to find that out. Like we'll be kind of butting heads because we are approaching the problem or approaching the decision in a different way, but we end up in the same place most of the time where it's like, oh, we're describing the same thing. Like you like
I was gonna
this.
say, I was
Yeah.
wondering if it's
It's a
a
communication thing.
I was wondering if it's because you're approaching a visual medium with words, which is
Yes.
almost always causes issues. This is such a huge thing with design where like a lot of the intake process with a lot of designers, they'll be like, "What style do you like? What do you want the room to feel like?" And they ask people to describe it. And they're asking people who are not acquainted with the language of a visual medium to suddenly be proficient in the language of a video medium. And when I say light and airy, that might make one picture in my head that is very
Yeah.
different from what you picture when you say light and airy. So it's using like the wrong medium to describe the thing. Which is why, like, I think visuals or getting in and actually moving things around together and
Yeah.
pointing at the thing and saying, like, this is the arrangement I like, rather than trying to describe it. Yeah, that makes me feel very
Yep.
hopeful. I feel like that's smart that you guys ended up
We
getting
figured
there.
that out. So we spent time like putting blue tape on the walls where I think we should have shelving so that I could show him exactly where I think
The
the shelving should
visual.
go in relation to like
Nice.
this window and this weird part of the room and whatever.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about what you say on your channel of like having limitations in a space actually can help you get to like what the cool design decision would be as opposed to
Hundo.
having like a completely blank space. And I've been trying to like
100%.
visually show him that because I think that makes him, he thinks we need to like fall in line with some of the limitations of the space. And I'm like, I think we can use that as a reason to be a little more like asymmetric here or whatever. And that's very
Cool.
hard for him to understand. And so I have to like put the tape on the wall and show him. And then usually it's not actually that far from what he was picturing. we just couldn't communicate
Yeah.
it in words. Exactly what you're saying.
Yes,
So
I love that you did a visual for it with the tape.
yeah,
Genius.
it's been helpful.
Genius.
So we are
Yeah.
rapidly improving at this stuff and also learning like what lanes are going to be owned by whom. But it is a very like on the fly, like we're doing it as we go because
How
those were
else could
not
you
the
know?
things. I know that's true. It's just
How
not the
else
things
could
that
you're
we
not
talked
doing?
about before.
Yeah, I feel like you're being like, oh, we're learning, we're getting better, but it's like you're doing it perfectly.
I
How the
know. It's
fuck
just
else?
been
How the fuck else
stressful.
could you ever know? You have to
Because
go
when you're
through it.
in
I'm
it,
sure it's
you're
draining. I'm
like,
sure it's
why are
draining.
we fighting about stupid stuff? But then like
Yeah.
obviously we're learning through it and we're getting better and we're much better at it than we were 2 weeks ago. But when you're in it, I don't know. You're like, shoot, like
Yeah.
I thought we were in a much better place than it turns out we are. And then of course, like 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, we just needed to navigate that real quick. We're better now.
Yeah. I think that's a huge thing where that I've tried to remind myself. I think a big thing I've noticed trips me up in my relationship or used to more was this fear that like, okay, there's some friction or some difference or some discord. And then I follow that with the fear that, oh, this is forever. It's going
Yeah.
to be like this forever. As opposed to like when you first meet somebody, and you don't know this fucking stranger yet, there are all these communication differences, all these different styles. And that's not a static trait. It's just something you
Mhm.
have to learn and see how you adjust that. It's not static at all. And most of these differences, I don't think they're static. If you both don't want them to be static, then
Right.
they won't be. The first time, oh my God, the way we decorate a home is so different. It's really different the first time. You guys both want it to sync up and work. So it's not going to be so hard forever. It was the same with you and I when we started the podcast. Oh
Yeah.
shit, the way we run a business or prepare a creative project is so different. Only when we started. Now it's
Yeah.
not. These aren't
And you know
static
what's so
differences.
funny? That reminds me that like a month or two ago when Ryan and I were like packing and getting ready for the move or maybe had just gotten in here, I sent you a voice memo that was like,
Yeah.
I was like, so I'm realizing that my way of making decisions is X and Ryan's is Y. And I think Ryan's might be more similar to yours or something when we first started the podcast and we were butting heads. And
Mhm.
like, I was like basically asking you, like, how did we clear that? Because it took one conversation and then we cleared it, it feels, as opposed to with me and Ryan, it's like many little conversations as opposed to one big one.
Sure.
And then we were through it. And I also asked you, and I was like, how did you fucking deal with me? Oh no,
You
it's
asked me
that,
you
it's that
asked me how I
Ryan.
dealt with you. You
I think
did.
Ryan is demonstrating the decision making that I was tending to do at the beginning of the podcast, and I was being
Oh
more
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
you. Yeah, like I had flipped or something.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. You
yeah,
asked
so
me
I'm
how
like,
I
I
dealt with
asked how
you.
you fucking dealt with me, and you were like, well, you didn't answer the question because you were being kind, but I was like, no, I really want to know. He's acting like me, and I hate it. We're
I
getting
loved
better.
that. Yeah, we're getting great.
Yeah.
Or you're getting great. I don't know who you're talking about when you
No,
said
you're
we,
in it.
but
All of us, just all of us collectively. We're all getting better every day.
yeah.
Is that the message for the end of
We're
the episode?
getting better every
Every day.
day. Oh my God, wait. I am going to say one last thing
Okay.
because it's time sensitive.
Oh,
Tomorrow.
Friday, October.
No. What day do you think today is?
No, I'm talking about when this episode goes up.
Oh, okay. I'm saying the day after this recording.
Okay, so
I am
Monday, October 21st, which is past tense for you,
2024.
listener.
2024. I'm going to timestamp this because I keep listening to podcasts and they're like, this court trial is starting today, August 20th. And I'm like, what year? Year. So October, assuming that this podcast lives into all of time. Today is October 20th, 2024. Perpetuity. This podcast listen to perpetuity. Tomorrow I'm attending my first ever group therapy session.
Whoa, that's
and I am
cool.
so fucking excited. I'm so excited. So my therapist, I'll just share about this real quick. I've never done group therapy. I have thought about it before. And I think before, I literally have to sit up. I'm so excited.
I
I
also want
think
to sit up.
before
I'm gonna.
I thought it was more like, I don't want to fucking learn from people who are struggling at the same level as me. I want to learn from people who are trained and wiser than me. No shit. But that's not what group therapy is about. I've learned it's more about like individual therapy is more dealing with your own history, your own relationships in your life, obviously your own shit, understanding yourself. But so if you haven't done that, you're probably not going to go into group therapy. Like you have to
Yeah.
have done enough of your own work and like whatever, have enough self-awareness of what you're working on. But in group therapy, it is literally setting you up in situations so that you can have those conflicts live with other people. It's way less about talking about your outside life, and it's way more about having conflict with people who are in the room and doing it live.
Wow.
So it's like, it's one step closer because like your therapist, there's so many instances where your therapist would really benefit from getting to watch you talk to your family, right?
Yeah.
But they never get to. And so this isn't exactly that. Obviously, it exists, these relationships exist in a little bit of a vacuum, but it's closer to that where you are going to be triggered by these people. You are going to get activated. You are going to be annoyed at them. You're going to be frustrated with them. And once my therapist and I have been talking about this for a while, she was like, I think you'd be a good addition to the group. And at first, I just thought she was trying to get my money because I'm paranoid and I always think everyone's trying to use me for a hidden agenda. And then eventually I realized that it was actually because I'd like graduated from individual and I needed, yeah. And we were sitting there talking about these dynamics and she was like, no, like you need to be like interacting and getting triggered by people so we can whatever. And
so interesting.
And she saw me zone out at one point and she was like, oh, I saw you just like disappeared a little. Where'd you go? And I was just like, oh, I'm just thinking about how fucking annoyed I'm going to be at everybody and how mad I am. And I was like, I'm so mad at them. I haven't even met them yet. And and it was a genuine feeling. And I'm like so excited. She laughed really hard, but like, I'm so excited for it because I know I need this because I am so fucking triggered by people all the time. If you haven't noticed by listening to this podcast, listen, I'm going to say it right now. I'm full of great ideas. I think I'm full of fucking insight. I'm full of fucking wisdom. I think I've got it down on paper and holy shit, am I triggered by people all day long.
Yeah.
And I
like I've never put it in those terms, like in the way that you just described it. Obviously, because I'm not
so mad at these people
thinking about you being triggered all day. But like
I haven't even met them yet.
Like this, I'm like, yeah, you are. You hate.
I'm
these
so mad
people.
at them. I hate them. I would say that I think you in real life. So there's a difference. Jess and I are a little different on the podcast than we are in person. I would say in person, you are way less triggered than me.
Oh, 100%.
You seem way less triggered than me.
I don't walk around triggered. I get triggered from like situations, of course. And on the podcast, I am very vulnerable in sharing those triggers that are happening like deep inside me every so often in my life or in certain relationships in my life or whatever. But I'm not like getting triggered left and right.
I'm
in
mad
the
at
way
people.
that you are. Yeah.
I'm mad at them.
It's hard to describe,
things,
but yes, we both know what we're talking about.
I think they're different things. I feel like it sounds like have been going through more of those like deeper things with the substantial relationships in your life.
Yes.
And I feel like I've moved through a lot of that. Nothing's fucking perfect. I feel like I've moved through a good bulk of that. And what I struggle with is the superficial relationships. Little interactions are the ones that get to me. Anyway,
but don't you think those are based in, because
it's all the fucking same, dude. It's all the same.
It's based in the stuff that happens in childhood or in the close relationships, or But yes, I understand.
But it's a problem in my life
differently. Yeah.
And I think it's something that I struggle with. It becomes a problem in my relationships, in my friendships, a lot, not in my family as much, not in my romantic relationship, but with my friends.
That's what it is.
I'm triggered by people all the time. And I'm like, you're
Yeah.
fucking annoying to me and I can't keep it to myself.
Okay, that's what it is. It's friendships. Yeah, I think I have
I think it's
less
friendships.
of the
Yeah.
friendship trigger and more of the other triggers. Yeah.
Yeah. And
But
it
I'm
is
very
definitely,
curious to
oh my
hear
God, I'm so excited.
the findings of this. Like, that's
Oh,
so interesting. I'm just also interested in
I
how
need
they
it.
set up a session. Like, are they
Oh,
giving random scenarios, or is it like people are talking about their own lives and you just workshop it together? Like, what is the
I think it's pretty
framework?
organic. I think she said that. So my first session is tomorrow. There's 2 therapists, a man and a woman, who basically kind of facilitate it.
Mhm.
And I think it starts organically, at least this one does, much like individual therapy, where it's like, is there something you want to talk about, or
Mm.
something else someone else wants to talk about, or are then we responding to that theme? I think it's pretty organic and just, I don't think it's like a guided book club
Yeah.
discussion at
Yeah.
all.
It's just
Yeah.
people start talking about whatever's on their minds, and then the group gets to kind of react and offer their own experiences, and you just see where it goes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then be like, hey, I'm going to pause and say, I feel really frustrated at how you talked to me a couple minutes ago. And you just like fucking have it out.
What? Caroline, I
I
think that you're
know.
approaching this like ready to fight, and that's not actually what it's for. You're like, and then the part
No, no, no,
comes
no,
where I
no.
get to yell at everyone.
No, that's not fair. That's not how I am.
I'm joking.
Um, no, I'm excited because it's not supposed to be a fight. It's supposed to be like
Productive, of
very
course.
uncomfortable honesty and vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
and owning difficult feelings in relationships where it's like uncomfortable. And I think the things that will be pitfalls for me, I already thought, I mean, like all the normal ways I'm going to be annoyed by people, but also I know that I can immediately feel this instinct in me to like want to go in and be like the best therapy student. I want to
Mm,
go in and show that I'm the wisest therapy
yeah.
patient here, and like an immediate seeking of approval from the supervisors. You know what I mean? I'm
I would feel that, I think, too.
so sick. So I
Mm-hmm.
know that I need like there's immediately a layer I need to shed to not to that my goal is not to get an A in group therapy.
Yeah.
That my goal
Humility.
is to be honest and vulnerable as opposed to
Yeah.
the person who's doing group therapy the best. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. That's super interesting. I'm really intrigued. I'm really excited.
I'm
How
really
long is a
excited.
session? Like just an hour? Or is it
Dog, I think
longer?
it's like an hour and 15 or something.
Okay.
It's long.
Cool.
I know I'm already in a fight
You'll
with
have to report
everyone.
back.
I will. I'm
Okay.
really excited. Okay.
She's not for everyone, but she is for group therapy. Thanks for being here as always, cucarachas. Um, you can leave us a review on Apple. We were sitting at 666 reviews. That's a 666 for
I
a
didn't
little
like it.
while there. And Caroline posted on our Instagram calling for help, and many of you helped. We really appreciate it. We have cleared the devil's number, and we love reading them. So just leave us more. It really helps more than you realize. You can DM us at not the number 4 everyone pod on Instagram, or email us. That's in our description if you have what to do's or other topics that you want us to react to. And that's it for today. We're sending you kisses.
We love you.
Kisses.
Kahuna.
Kahuna kisses.